All right, welcome everybody. I'm Robert. This is my co-host Nathan, and we are joined here by our special guest, Don Gillett, Senior Principal Engineer for AWS IoT. Don, it's such a pleasure to have you. Welcome to the show. Please give the audience a quick introduction of yourself and what we're talking about today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Don Gillett, I'm a Senior P on AWS IoT Division, and this week we're announcing the AWS IoT TwinMaker service. And so this is a service aimed at developers, partners, and customers to facilitate building digital twin applications.
Okay, so I hear this term digital twin, and it makes me wonder, what are we twinning here? Are we talking about a twin of a person? What does the digital twin mean?
Yeah, so digital twin, there's lots of definitions for digital twin. So customers will use that term for all different kinds of things, from just simple CAD to full systems that have 3D visualization and an ML. And we're taking a very inclusive route. It is whatever it is to meet your business needs. But basically, it comes down to having a virtual representation of the physical world, and that could be a fulfillment center, a factory, a piece of equipment, processes that happen in a physical environment. So all of those would be something you can build a digital twin of.
Interesting. So you say a digital representation of it. What exactly are we representing in the digital twin? Is it data based on the factory or fulfillment center? How does that help me as a owner or operator of that center?
Yeah, well, that's where the IoT part of the IoT TwinMaker comes in. Is that to represent the physical world, you have to have measurements of the physical world, and so AWS has all kinds of services to help bring in data and be able to reason on that data, visualize that data. But in a digital twin, we also have this additional challenge that in order to really know about something, we have to fuse lots of information together. So digital twins, we find, often combine things from IoT sensors, line of business applications such as maintenance records. And so TwinMaker really helps you bring together all that data, fuse it together, and meet your objectives.
I see. So it's almost kind of like an aggregator of these different information sources to kind of make the information a little bit easier to digest for operators. Is that a valid use case?
Yeah, it's so we often talk about providing a single pane of glass as an outcome for a digital twin. And so, operators want to be able to, at a glance, see what's happening, pull together all the information within a single view, and be able to make decisions, either automated decisions or be able to just provide more intelligence to the human to make their action quicker. And then in many cases also participate in doing that action, command and control, or change something in their environment.
That sounds really interesting. The first thing this makes me think of is sort of the old pictures of like classic control centers from like factories, power plants from like the 60s, 70s, and 80s, where they would have like a whole wall set up with gauges and like lights and different controls for adjusting how the factory or power station was operating. But the problem with that was, obviously, as a physical location, and all these physical devices on the wall required physical layout. So if I want to change that, I want to add new gauge or a new blinking light, I have a significant expense to do that. Plus, I have to actually be on location to look at this control panel on the wall. So when you say like a digital twin, it sounds like I'm able to take that sort of 20,000 foot overlook of my factory and now turn it into a digital representation that I can access anywhere over the internet. I can switch it up, change it up easily. Am I understanding this correctly?
Yeah, that's right. We've focused on what we call operational digital twins. As I mentioned, digital twins can be an all part of a process from early product design through analysis. And so the part that we're really focusing on is, what is that operational digital twin? So yeah, that picture of that massive control panel, we're providing digital versions of that where you can not only turn that over quicker, but also have it be dynamic. So as depending on what I'm focusing on, I get different controls that make sense for what I want to drill into. So it's not just that 20,000 foot level; it's also that micro level of when we drill in and really slice and dice and find out what went wrong in my factory, or how to or my facility or my equipment, and find out how to optimize it.
Now, obviously, designing like an analog control panel would be very difficult to do, but I imagine designing a digital twin control panel or dashboard for your facility is also difficult. Can you talk a little bit about like what's involved with making that happen, and you know, what do you
Yeah.
need to actually make that work?
Yeah, but there's a couple of phases towards building a digital twin. So the first part is obviously getting data in. And so we have a whole part of TwinMaker about having a knowledge graph where you can pull in that data. This is usually done by a development team. So pulling in that data, connecting to sources, hooking up new sources. And then once you have all that information, then providing the different views. And those evolve over time. And so that's one of the things that we really want to look after, is that we're matching all the personas of the people who are in the process of building, maintaining, using a digital twin. So editing a digital twin needs to be easy. We need to be able to make it, easy to change that single pane of glass and add things as they need. So we've partnered with a lot of our partners to provide this, and one of them is Grafana. And so Grafana provides gives us a means of having a single pane of glass that can be edited by an operator and add in different panels. And I'll be able to show that to you today.
Yeah, as you two were talking, I realized that Nathan kind of painted this nice picture of an analog control panel with dials and knobs, and I'm thinking this is pretty old school stuff. But it occurs to me that kind of system, is not as able to keep up. Let's say you make an adjustment to the layout of machinery on your floor, you increase the number of production units from 10 to 20. I could imagine that you would want something that is reconfigurable, right? That you want to be able to have a way to take your existing operational systems and make sure that new information is exposed and accounted for. Because, I mean, how could you possibly make the correct decisions about managing that factory if you don't even know the correct number of units or where the machinery actually is? So is that kind of is that part of the reason why we built this, Don, so that we have the tools to give customers to kind of have agile operational capabilities?
Yeah, that's certainly one of them. That, as you said, rebuilding that dashboard, we kind of differentiate how hard that is with a term that we use a lot, which is like low code or no code. And so Grafana provides you the ability to come in a low code way or no code in a lot of cases, and change panels and change the visualization in order to do that. Now, why did we do this? The reason why we did this is because there are a lot of heavy lifts in building a digital twin. And so we'll show you several of those, such as 3D. If you're going to go hire a dev team of 3D specialists and keep them on the project while you maintain and want to make adjustments, it's a very heavy lift. So we wanted to provide out-of-the-box components that get you very far down that. And there's several other heavy lifts that we do too, such as video. So we're very excited about the video. We have a service called Kinesis Video Streams, KVS, in AWS, where it can take video from security cameras or industrial cameras and host that and store that and archive it. And so we'll show you a dashboard that has the combined ability to show that video along with the telemetry.
Okay, so I'm hearing video, I'm hearing 3D visualization, I'm hearing that you're going to show us a dashboard. This sounds really interesting. I really want to see this in action.
Yeah, great.
Let's see if we can bring up demo.
Okay, so what I'm showing you here is as I said, there's a Grafana page. You can get Grafana in several ways. You can self-host it. You can use AWS managed Grafana. There's lots of ways to host it. And what I'm showing here is a cookie factory. It's actually a bakery, and the bakery has lots of equipment and spread out over a whole factory here. So you can see the mixing room with about 25 mixers in here, and then a couple of cookie lines that include former freezer packing. And so this kind of acts as an example scenario. And this you can get this and run this. We have a GitHub samples that we'll link to that provides this out of the box. So you can run through this, install the sample data, and get these dashboards up and running, and gives you a good start for your own digital twin.
Wow, so this 3D visualization is awesome. Where did these models come from? Like, I'm picturing, you know, if I was to implement this myself, I'd have to hire a team of people to model my devices and sort of lay them out, and it would be very hard. I don't even know how I would go about getting that into a browser tab. Yeah.
Yeah, so the rendering, you know, there's lots of ways, approaches to rendering. You can render with rich, you know, single-use applications. We've taken the approach of saying that we wanted to use browser technology in order to embed this in a single pane of glass, and it also eases the distribution. It doesn't matter if it's running Mac, Windows, Linux, or a mobile device. And so we think this is a very good choice to get a lot of scope in terms of reusing this component. Now, in terms of getting the models, there's lots of ways of getting the models. We can, and that is a difficult part of building a digital twin, is just to get the models. And so we have lots of ways to come off of CAD programs, various CAD programs. There's lots of photogrammetry and scanning, and you know, just a lot of manufacturers will start including those models with their equipment. And so that'll evolve over time, become easier and easier. But that's definitely one of the challenges, getting your models, arranging them. We have a editor that allows you to arrange it into this configuration. And what you're seeing in here is a bunch of what we call tags in the system. And these can be, give you an at-a-glance view of what's happening. So you can see in here in the mixing room, a couple of these are in their alert state. And so if I click on those, it'll highlight that mixer so I can see details and deep dive on it. I can see where that is. So a lot of customers will say, yeah, I've got 10,000 alarms that can go off in my factory. And when that goes off, if the expert isn't there, I don't even know where the thing is. And so this allows you to do that thing, like, let's say this water tank, which has been going in and out. So I've zoomed right to it. I know exactly where it is. I know which one it is out of all the water tanks in this facility. I can see that going through an oscillation of somebody, you know, resetting the alert and coming back in. And
that
so,
sounds so useful for maintenance people too. You know, yeah. if I try to file a maintenance ticket and say, hey, I need you to go take a look at this water tank, they're going to be like, well, which one? They can load up the 3D model. They can see exactly where in the facility, go directly there rather than wasting time hunting from one to the next, trying to check numbers and make sure they match up.
Yeah, that's right. And also, you know, having the ability to then drill in. I don't have that on this particular dashboard, but then drill into a piece of equipment. How do I how do I get the cover off of it? How do I do that? So exploded parts view is something else you can do here.
Yeah.
I'll call out another interesting element in here. So you'll see in this bottom right panel, what this is actually a video panel. And so in this case, we're showing synthetic video. This was rendered, and we'll eventually have a blog article on how we did that rendering of our virtual scene to create video, so you don't have to capture that to do these test scenarios like this. But for example, you know, here's a camera marker. I can click on this, and it'll navigate over to me and select that camera view, and you'll see it actually go and fetch that video off of KVS and play it from that angle. So a lot of times, you know, you'll have telemetry on different pieces of equipment, but you won't know, you know, all the things that went wrong. Like, okay, Robert ran the forklift into the device, and you know, so we want to find out what it is. So this provides that extra ability to, you know, drill in and utilize video, which is a ever-growing common thing that we see in buildings today.
Wow, yeah, that's you should awesome. Never trust me with a forklift. Now, one thing that's really interesting here is, you know, you have these little icons. You know, if you zoom out a little bit and show us the mixer room again, right? You have some of these at a glance, this colored icon that's like, oh, this machine is red and something's probably wrong with it. We need to drill into it. And as you were going through that demo, I imagine that we can assess that based on a variety of different input metrics, right? I mean, using this kind of cookie factory analogy here. We could imagine that one input data point is how much dough there is loaded into each one of these machines, right? Maybe it turns red when it's out of dough and needs to be reloaded, or maybe, you know, there's some other, maybe the temperature is too high on one of them, or maybe there's something that's malfunctioning. Any one of these things could trigger some piece of information that on this to use your terminology, this single pane of glass would tell you, hey, somebody needs to pay attention to this piece of machinery. But can you tell us how exactly do you integrate all those different data sources, right? Let's say that I have a dough mixer and I have various components on that machine that can send that sensor data along. Let's say temperature is important, or let's say that flow rate is important. Like, walk us through that. Like, how do we do that? Does the customer have to buy an off-the-shelf device and then attach those and configure those themselves, or are there I don't know, certified devices that already do this that integrate magically?
Yeah, well, good segue there. Let me go flop over here and show you our console. And so this is IoT TwinMaker Console. You get that from just the AWS console, like any other service. And you'll see in here that, for example, a set of workspaces. And so here's our cookie factory workspace that we're in. And the workspace gives you kind of a container that you can build your application, test it. It becomes a security boundary. You can make a copy of this workspace in order to test it and before deploying it. But what you're really talking about is, how do I take all the data that I have, different sources? So it might be, for example, AWS SiteWise might be some of the data, or TimeStream, or maybe even a third-party database like Snowflake, or any one of these services where I've got data, or a line of business app. How do we merge all that together? And so we have a model in AWS IoT TwinMaker we call what's our knowledge graph I talked about earlier. And what it has is it has a component entity model to it. So, for example, in the cookie factory here, we have a bunch of cameras that we've modeled. We have the different spaces. So these are actually the different rooms, like the factory in the room. So I can model all that information using this entity component model. So for example, on the mixers in there, so we'll just click on a mixer here. There is several components that get added to a mixer. And so here's the component types that I can add to this. So for example, we have Edge Video would be a video connector to pull in video, or TimeStream telemetry is a sample component we have of how to use TimeStream to pull in that data. So when you have these entities that you add to your twin, then basically what you can do is add these components, and they provide code behind that lets it go pull in other data. And so that's done through writing a Lambda. So for example, those mixers were all having data stored into TimeStream. And then there's a Lambda that we can call to go pull all that data and stream it back. And we have an opinionated model of how to retrieve that data so that it makes it easy to show it on dashboards. And so you can pick from any of our built-in entities to add these to your entities, to your components to build to your entities, or you can write your own, or we'll have several partners that will author different entities that you can leverage.
So the ones that I see there, they're marked like com.example.cookiefactory.mixer. That's a user-defined component. And then the other ones that are com.amazon.IoT TwinMaker, those are predefined ones that you get out of the box.
That's correct. Yep. And so the getting started example that I mentioned, if you go to GitHub and download that, that will install these example ones and have, in some cases, components are very simple. So for example, the space component on here just has the location of where the item is in the environment. So lets you really quickly build together a knowledge graph about what's in your facility or in your machine or your process. But then as you add the code behind, that allows you to then go out and reach out to the data sources that you have. And so we have samples of that in here. And that's what that TimeStream telemetry component is. One of the things I'll bring up is that we found it very important to meet customers where their data is. So we have some very good TimeStream databases. We have IoT SiteWise, which is where I'd recommend going to start with collecting all your IoT data. But we can't always go and consider it greenfield scenarios. We have to consider these brownfield scenarios where you have data already, and so we wanted to connect to those, and we do that through these entities that we can add to our components.
Yeah, one thing that I'm wondering, and you tell me if this is possible, but because it's a digital twin, we can actually do things that are not necessarily so convenient in the physical world, right? So for instance, if we go back to that other tab that you have where we have the model of the factory floor, would it be possible, for example, to take some of those different sensors? Let's say I have a bunch of temperature sensors in here, and I set an alarm state for an entire room, an entire part of the factory, where I say, hey, look, if the mixer room rises above 85 degrees, then we have a risk of the ingredients spoiling. And I want to set an alarm on the room, not necessarily in a machine, and not necessarily on the thermometer, right? Is there a way that we could build something like that?
Yeah, absolutely. So anytime you do a calculation, I like to think of that as just a transform on the data. So you have a raw input feed, and then you don't really associate an alarm with the 3D world. You kind of want to layer those together. So you've got some temperature, and then you want to set an alarm. And so for example, in SiteWise, you can do that. You can pull in the temperature reading, set alarm based on whatever conditions, and then that just creates another property. Right, is there an alarm? And then everything you see here is just bound to that property. And so that's exactly what these icons are bound to is the alarm state for those. But you could also bind to temperature and show when a color gradient based on what the temperature is.
Yeah, that is fascinating. And I imagine we could spend a lot longer talking about all the possibilities, but you've already really opened my eyes in terms of why this kind of solution is even necessary. And now, I'm already thinking like, hey, what could we do next with this thing? Don, this is incredible. I wish we could spend more time here, but we have a lot of other great launches that we need to cover. So with that, do you have any other closing thoughts, or for customers who are really excited about this announcement, where should they go to get started?
Well, you can go to obviously to our console and get started off here. So IoT TwinMaker off the console, and then we also have the AWS samples out on GitHub. There is a repository on that called AWS IoT TwinMaker samples. And so that is, the best place to, follow through the instructions to install these data sources. It's a very rich sample, so it does take a little bit of time to set it up. It takes me about 10 minutes to get everything working end to end, and we'll get faster at that. But there's a lot there. There's video, there's 3D visualization, dashboards, sample data. So it's a very good comprehensive example, and get started on that and modify it and make it your own.
All right, Don, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.